Forget the old career ladder. These days, for a lot of us, a career path feels more like a jungle gym, right? It's got twists, turns, and you're constantly jumping from one thing to the next. We call this the boundaryless career. But what if that's not the whole story? What if we've been missing a huge piece of the puzzle that explains everything?
Think about it. We all know those talented people who seem to move between companies. But are they all just restless wanderers? Or is there something way more complex going on just beneath the surface? Well, that's the big question we're digging into today.
So here's the common myth, right? The idea that anyone with this boundaryless mindset is just inherently disloyal, that they've always got one foot out the door. Ambitious, sure, but also a constant flight risk.
So let's really dive into that myth. We're going to take a closer look at this boundaryless employee and see why that common assumption might be, well, completely wrong. Or at the very least, just half the story.
And hey, this isn't just some theory we cooked up. We're grounding this whole explainer in a really fascinating study that looked at so-called talented employees. And what it uncovered about their motivations is honestly pretty surprising.
Okay, so here's the big reveal from the research. The boundaryless employee isn't just one type of person. Nope. Turns out there are two totally distinct profiles with very different things driving them. So let's meet the networker and the mover.
All right, on one hand, you've got the networker. These folks are proactive. They get a real charge out of new experiences, and they build relationships to grow. Then, on the other hand, you have the mover. They're a bit more reactive, and their main focus is physically changing jobs to get a better title or more pay. See? Totally different approaches.
And this is the crucial distinction. The networker has what the researchers call a boundaryless mindset. Now, this isn't about leaving a job. It's a psychological thing, a hunger for new connections and new experiences that help them grow, whether that's inside or outside their current company.
The mover, though, has something called an organizational mobility preference. This is way more literal. It's a physical desire to pack up and move to a different company. And it's almost always driven by external rewards. A bigger salary, a fancier title, that kind of thing.
Okay, so why does any of this actually matter? Well, it matters because these two profiles have completely different attitudes at work. Let's take a look at how their mindset really impacts things like loyalty, job satisfaction, and, whether they're actually planning to leave.
And get ready for the first big shocker. The networker, the person who's all about building relationships across boundaries, is actually more loyal and more committed to their current company. I know, it sounds totally backward, but it seems their drive to connect actually makes their bond with their employer even stronger.
Meanwhile, the mover, well, they fit that old stereotype perfectly. Their preference for physically jumping ship is directly linked to lower commitment and just being less happy at work. Yeah, this is the profile that keeps managers up at night.
I know this looks a little complicated, but let's just focus on two key pathways, okay? First, find boundaryless mindset up at the top. See that line? It positively connects right to organizational commitment. Now, find organizational mobility preference down at the bottom. Notice how that arrow points to lower commitment and satisfaction? That's the whole finding in one picture, right there.
So we have two very different types of employees here. One is driven by internal growth, the other by what's happening outside. This leads to the million-dollar question for pretty much any manager. Can you just throw money at the problem? Let's see how pay really changes the game.
It's the age-old question, isn't it? If you've got someone who might leave, can a bigger paycheck make them stay? And more importantly, can it actually make them happy? The answer is that it completely depends on who you're paying. This chart right here, this shows the study's biggest surprise. See those bolded arrows? They show where being happy with your pay makes a massive difference. And notice how they're all connected to the organizational mobility preference, our movers. For the networkers, good pay doesn't really move the needle on their core attitudes. Let's be super clear on this one. For the networker, being satisfied with their paycheck doesn't really change how committed or happy they are. They are driven by growth, by learning, by connection. Yeah, money is nice, but it's not what gets them out of bed in the morning. But for the mover, for them, pay satisfaction is everything. When they feel like they're being compensated well, those negative attitudes just flip. Their loyalty and their job satisfaction shoot way up. For this group, compensation is the master key to keeping them around and keeping them engaged.
So, what's the deep psychological reason for this split? Well, it all comes down to something called approach versus avoidance motivation. Think of it like this.
Networkers are running towards growth and new experiences. But movers? Well, they might just be running away from a bad situation, like feeling underpaid or like they aren't valued.
All right, let's pull all this together and make it practical. We've busted the myth that all ambitious employees are cut from the same cloth. The real question now is, what does this new reality mean for you, whether you're an employee trying to figure out your path or a manager trying to build a great team?
Okay, if you're an employee, the big takeaway here is to really understand what drives you. Ask yourself, are you energized by new projects and people like a networker? Or are you more focused on finding the best salary and title like a mover? There's no wrong answer, but knowing your profile can help you make career choices that actually lead to real fulfillment.
And for all the managers out there, this is a huge wake-up call. The one-size-fits-all retention strategy? It's dead. You've got to motivate your networkers with opportunities for growth and connection. And you need to retain your movers with what they value: competitive pay and really clear, tangible rewards. Two different people, two different playbooks.
So, if you remember just one thing from all this, let it be this: ambition is not a single trait. To keep your best people, you absolutely have to understand the why behind their drive. Is it a hunger for growth, or is it a search for a better reward?
And that leaves us with a final question to chew on. In a world where careers are only going to get more and more fluid, the real challenge for organizations will be, how do we adapt? How do we create systems that can identify, support, and motivate both of these incredibly valuable but very different types of modern employees?